Good evening, I'm Tori Crichton. 1995 will go down in history as a momentous year for most Bermudians, and especially as a memorable one for the Bermuda Regiment. For this year is the 30th anniversary of our military, and I invite you to come with me as we take a look at our brave men and women. They've been on display for kings and queens, princesses, presidents, governors, and premiers, and yet, each time we see the Bermuda Regiment on display, we are stirred by the sight of precision and skill. Lieutenant Colonel David Birch, the commanding officer of the regiment, says that particularly now, the Bermuda Regiment is needed, and has this to say about the men and the women under his command.
In a ceremonial sense, the commanding officer participates in all of the parades that the regiment is involved in as the commanding officer. And in an operational sense, my responsibility is to command the regiment effectively. I'm responsible for training, meeting our fitness for role. We are annually tested externally, and a major portion of our training year is designed so that we pass those tests. I've been in the regiment for 17 years, and I'm in the sort of twilight of my service, as it were. When you become the commanding officer, that is your last job in the regiment. You effectively retire out at the end of that process, and in my case, it'll be in June '97. I guess the biggest highlight, apart from the military aspects and the service to the community, I guess from a personal point of view, the biggest advantage that I have received from service in the regiment is getting an opportunity to meet people that I perhaps would not otherwise have met, and making friends that will be lifelong friends through my service in the regiment. Well, I think that we very much try and look at it as a community effort, albeit that's the fourth sort of role of the regiment. But we spend a lot of time assisting people in the community in very small ways, and in often cases very big ways. I suspect that those people that the commanding officer is forced to say no and decline to probably would disagree. But on an annualized basis, we probably assist the community in about 300 instances during the course of any given year. We, of course, get a lot larger number of requests than that, but because we're a part-time organization, that's the main sort of impediment.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, away!
Well, I think it's one of the few organizations that has been able to maintain a standard of discipline, and we have a lot of incentive to do that, in that the law of the land dictates that people are conscripted into the regiment, males are conscripted into the regiment, and they have a responsibility to serve for 3.5 years. And so with that sort of background, we carry a fairly big stick in terms of forcing people to complete their service. We take the view that it is a lot easier to try and encourage them to complete their service as opposed to forcing them. And I think that having set standards of discipline and indicated to people right at the outset the penalties for not carrying out one's responsibilities, I think we make it very clear to people that they have a responsibility to carry out in terms of service in the regiment. And I think a lot more people go on to do it voluntarily than having to force them to do it. I'm a classic case in point, and many of the permanent staff are in the same boat, where we originally started in the regiment as conscripts, and during the course of compulsory service saw the value of the regiment and have stayed on. Certainly in my time in the regiment, I think that it's fair to say that we've gotten better at doing what it is that we're required to do. The regiment, obviously, in the last sort of 15 years has doubled in size as a result of what is commonly referred to as the Gilbert Report in 1977. I think that the regiment is a much more professional operation today, and whilst there are some segments of the community that have some hesitation or doubts about our ability to carry out our responsibilities. I think that certainly the powers that be have a lot of confidence in the regiment and have invested a lot of not only manpower resources but financial resources in ensuring that we are up to speed. And I think that the regiment provides a valuable service to the community and is capable today of carrying out all of its responsibilities. And it's an ever-evolving organization. In the short time that I've been CEO, not a lot has changed in terms of direction and philosophy, but there is always fine-tuning. And I don't think that it's a reflection on previous administrations that some things have changed. It's just changing to adapt to current times.
What future plans are there in place for the Bermuda Regiment for the next 30 years?
In a word, to go from strength to strength. Obviously, with the closing of the various military bases on the island, there are numerous discussions that have taken place already and are ongoing in terms of an expanded role for the regiment. I think that certainly we are looking forward to participating in that process, but at this stage of the game, nothing has been decided. And whilst I don't see the primary role of the regiment changing, I see any changes to the regiment in the course of the next 30 years with base closures, possible independence, that there would be an expanded role for the regiment, and that our current responsibilities would remain, and we would be tasked with additional responsibilities, additional manpower, additional financial resources. But that's a matter for the politicians.
September 1st, 1965 saw the formation of the Bermuda Regiment, a result of the amalgamation of the Bermuda Militia Artillery and the Bermuda Rifles. The Bermuda Militia Artillery was formed by act of the Colonial Parliament in 1892, with enlistment beginning in 1895. Two contingents served in the First World War, comprising 250 men of all ranks, seeing service in France and Belgium. During the Second World War, the unit manned an examination battery at St. David's and later at Warwick Camp until 1946. In 1944, 5 officers and 100 other ranks joined the Caribbean Regiment and served in Italy and Egypt. The Bermuda Volunteer Rifle Corps was formed in 1895 after an act was passed by the Bermuda Legislature in July 1892. One of the first public displays was a small contingent appearing at the Diamond Anniversary celebration of Queen Victoria in 1897. During World War I, the Bermuda Volunteer Rifle Corps sent 2 volunteer contingents to serve with the Lincolnshire Regiment. The first contingent arrived in France in June 1915, and it's believed that they were the first colonial volunteer contingent to reach French soil. Of the 122 men serving with the Lincolnshire Regiment, 40 died on active service. With the approval of King George V, the BVRC formed an affiliation with the Lincolnshire Regiment, and now, because of amalgamations in England, the Bermuda Regiment is affiliated with the Royal Anglian Regiment, of which the old Lincolnshire is a part. During World War II, 2 contingents totaling 110 men served with the Lincolnshire Regiment and saw action in Northwest Europe and Burma. The BVRC was then demobilized in 1946, which was completed in 1951. In 1951, under the Defense Act of 1949, both units were reformed. The Bermuda Militia Artillery retained its name, but the Bermuda Volunteer Rifle Corps was succeeded by the Bermuda Rifles. However, both units retained a separate identity. Conscription was introduced in 1957 for the Bermuda Rifles and for the Bermuda Militia Artillery in 1960, with both units being amalgamated to form the Bermuda Regiment in 1965 under the Defense Act of that year. While it began with a strength of 460 men, its size has grown to over 600 servicemen and women. The Colonel-in-Chief of the Bermuda Regiment is Her Royal Highness the Princess Margaret, who has come to Bermuda twice in her capacity as Colonel-in-Chief to present the regiment's colors, most recently being 1990 as part of the regiment's 25th anniversary celebrations. Presently, the Bermuda Regiment is commanded by Lieutenant Colonel David Birch, with Major Patrick Outerbridge as second in command. There are 610 officers, non-commissioned officers, and soldiers currently serving in the regiment. The rank structure of the regiment begins with privates as the lowest rung of the ladder, followed by the non-commissioned officers, which are lance corporal, corporal, sergeant, color sergeant, sergeant major, and regimental sergeant major in ascending order. And the officers also in ascending order are second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, major, and lieutenant colonel. The regiment is made up of the following groups: Rifle Companies A and B, which comprise second and third year soldiers; Training Company, made up of first year recruits; the Support Company, which includes assault pioneers, boat troop, gun troop, motor transport, junior leaders and cadets; Signals Platoon, Medical Platoon, Public Relations, Regimental Police, and the Bermuda Regiment Band. The Quartermaster's Department includes the Armory, cooks, and stores. Another component of the Bermuda Regiment that has come to the forefront in recent years is the role that women play, for they are not just the secretaries and the cooks or some other secondary role. Although women are not yet combatants, that is, they do not participate in fighting, they do play a valuable part, and in doing so command the respect of even the most chauvinistic of males. Sergeant Major Marilyn Steede, who also pulls double duty as the regiment's chief clerk, explains that the road she traveled to her present position wasn't easy, but perseverance paid off.
I wouldn't say that it's unusual for females to be in the regiment. I mean, because they have a campaign for volunteers. So if you apply and you get selected, so it's really not unusual. What might be unusual is my current rank, because females have never, in Bermuda Regiment, a female has never carried that rank. So I might consider that unusual. Wasn't I sat down and thought about, this is what I want to do? I just opened the paper one day, the advert was there, and at that particular time, with some adverse things happening in my life where I wasn't feeling very good about myself, the ad was there, I saw it as a challenge, and I knew nothing, completely nothing about Bermuda Regiment. Fortunately or unfortunately, none of my brothers, I have 3, none of them were called up. So the Bermuda Regiment was totally foreign to me. I'm always got on high heels, so to speak, and dressed up, and don't earn a pair of flats. So the thought of me wearing boots was, they just couldn't see that, they couldn't comprehend that. So they joked about it, but they couldn't see me because of the way I had to dress and stuff like that. After I think about day 2, I really questioned what I had done. At that time, it was really a matter of discipline and to see what you're made of and what you can do. Not that they were testing you, but if you had your own self-pride or self-motivation, you wanted to do whatever they asked you to. But I felt then it was something I didn't want to look forward to for the next 3 years because it was tough. It wasn't easy, it was tough. The year that I joined was the last year that they recruited females and males separately. What it was, the males did the 2-week camp, and the day they left, the females came in for the next 2 weeks. And then they married together, the males and females married together after the two-week camps were over. And then if you wanted to join the potential NCO cadre, that's when the males and females got together of that intake. And now they come in together. So our training was separate, but we had all male instructors. Today we have a total of 20, and 14 of them are in the band. So the infantry part of female intake is very low right now. They're decreasing right now only because of what's inevitable. What I mean is they're doing the 3 years, and the 3 years is up, and so it's time for them to leave. That's the only reason they're decreasing, and we haven't had a recruitment drive for females for the last 2 years. But I do see it increasing only because the numbers are small, and no matter how chauvinistic they might be, they do need women in there for certain things. So I think they will have to do another recruitment drive and bring our numbers up again. When I joined, I was a soldier, totally soldier. I had a civilian job, and I came up. on my drill night through the week just with the guys and did that. I'm telling you this because I'm a sergeant major and also I'm on permanent staff now, so I'm their chief clerk. But because I came to sergeant major right from back private, every promotion, I did every promotion to get there, from back private to lance corporal, so have you moved up. So I've moved up in the ranks. So I have seen the infantry side of it, I've been a part of it, I've been heavily involved in it. So all my knowledge from there, I find when I went to the secretarial part of it now, I needed all that knowledge because it is very beneficial, because it assists me in my position now because I know what they're talking about because I've been there. And so I can find shortfalls and I can even have input.
So for the women recruits, soldiers, etc., I would take it then that they do make certain allowances for women, i.e. maternity leave and things like that.
Well, the maternity leave is sort of the same as any employment organization. What I mean is they know they're in for 3 years, and if pregnancy happens, it's not a problem. They go for as long as they want to go. They deliver their baby and they come back and continue their time.
So if you had the opportunity then to speak to, say, a young woman who might be interested in the regiment but as yet still can't make up their mind, but they're close to it, what would you say to them? Would you encourage them?
I would encourage them, and I would also tell them, I would encourage them to join the regiment, and also I would let them know, if you're going to come into the regiment, you're coming in as a minority, right? So don't come and want to overpower them by keep reminding them they are female, because the policy of the regiment are there really aren't any females in the regiment. There are only soldiers. So I've seen the failure in some of the women not to follow my route is they get in and then they take on this female side of them, which the two really can't go together 100%. I'm not saying you need to be a man. I'm not saying you need to be a feminist and prove you can do whatever they can do, but remember, you volunteer. So you came up there and you are really introduced to what is expected of you. So you have plenty of time to know what you're getting into or have a good idea what you're getting into. So your reasons for joining, as long as they're serious, you know, and they're solid, then there's nothing wrong. But if you're just looking for an outlet for a month or two, that's not the thing to do.
Right. The regiment is seen on several occasions throughout the year, with the convening of Parliament, the Peppercorn Ceremony, the Queen's Birthday Parade, and the Remembrance Day Parade being just a few. The regiment band and drum corps have performed during the visits of several important people, including Her Majesty the Queen and His Royal Highness Prince Philip, British Prime Ministers Margaret Thatcher and John Major, United States President George Bush, and Her Royal Highness the Princess Margaret. By far, the most visible part of the Bermuda Regiment is the band and drum corps, active in a mainly ceremonial part, performing at dozens of events and charitable functions during the year, and delighting Bermuda's visitors with beading retreat ceremony. The band has also represented Bermuda abroad on several occasions, with the most notable being the Lord Mayor's Parade in London in 1984. Of course, the regiment must provide adequate medical care and training for its soldiers and members of the medical corps. Captain Dr. Roderick Moore is in charge of this sector of the regiment and provides details on his role, what he and the medical corps encounters, and what the regiment has to offer each soldier, medically speaking.
Well, I'm coming into my 4th year with the regiment now. I started, I was commissioned back in 91, I believe, and my role really is to ensure that the soldiers are kept in fit and healthy states, and essentially, to a certain degree, I teach first aid and perhaps CPR occasionally, and this has been going on now for like I say, 4 years. I think the medical section, obviously, in the setting of the regiment here in Bermuda, doesn't encounter the injuries you might see in other other armed forces. So we're talking mainly in terms of injuries to young men, perhaps the occasional even psychiatric problem, but mainly it's orthopedic injuries and the like of that. From the medical point of view, we offer medical expertise, and myself and Colour Sergeant Brangman included, who's my right-hand man, and he's excellent, in fact. He deals with the day-to-day organisation and seeing the patients on a daily basis, especially when they're in camp, of course. We offer full medical coverage, full insurance, whilst they're pursuing regimental activities. And I think as far as the medical section goes, we offer them teaching that they may not have got in any other way. Colour Sergeant Brangman in particular, he likes to teach first aid, and he gets it to a level perhaps somewhere between St. John's and maybe even almost up to EMT level. So the young recruit who goes in not knowing how to perform CPR will certainly be able to come out and perform CPR and a variety of other first aid activities. We have about 15 in the medical section. They come and go, but usually work around that sort of figure. And they're fairly competent by the end of their 3 years. Most of them request to come to the medical section, and they definitely show an interest. And the level of competency is very good by the time they get out. Like I say, it's probably slightly above St. John's ambulance standard. And Brangman works well with them, really. Certainly the primary role is to go down and look after the guys, and to teach our medics what it's like to take part in field medicine, when essentially they're on their own for hours at a time without getting to sort of medical expertise. But certainly we found, and I enjoyed this part of it when we were down in Jamaica, there would be locals who would, we were up in the jungle, you've got to remember, and they perhaps wouldn't get access to doctors, and they'd walk miles to come and see us. And that was particularly rewarding to see these guys come down, and we were able to help them and perhaps give them treatment that wasn't available to them at that time. And we visited the local hospital in San Antonio and Port Antonio, and we gave them some supplies and so on, which were much appreciated, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. Initially, we have to draw on the rest of the doctors on the island to do the primary initial examination of whether or not you're going to be able to serve in the regiment, because I wouldn't be able to do all 150 to 200 examinations. So we call upon the other doctors to help out there. But also, as you know, in Bermuda, more and more young men have orthopedic injuries, bone injuries from cycle accidents and so on. And this is one of the major outlets, if you like, of getting out of the regiment. So the difficulty I have is deciding who's fit and who's not fit. And really, I think I do a reasonably fair job. I'm not influenced by anything. But I have to draw on the experience there of the specialists that we have on the island, and they're extremely helpful. And between us, we decide who's ready to serve and who isn't.
The assistance of the Bermuda Regiment has been called upon by police in times of civil disturbance, also in times of hurricane aftermath, most notably in 1987, when the regiment turned out en masse to help the island recover from Hurricane Emily. Since that time, regiment contingents have gone to the Caribbean to assist in hurricane relief efforts in Jamaica, Montserrat, and Tortola. Every year, the regiment travels overseas for training. For a time, this was principally done in Jamaica with the assistance of the Jamaica Defense Force. But recently, an association with the United States Marine Corps has allowed the regiment to train at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and now the regiment overseas training alternates between the two sites. The regiment's annual recruit camp is probably the most worrying yet exhilarating time for a soon-to-be Bermuda Regiment soldier. For highlights of Recruit Camp 1995, stay tuned. The annual Bermuda Regiment Recruit Camp is probably the most stressful time for the new regiment recruit. For this time may be a rude awakening for some, having been used to individual freedom and being able to somewhat determine your own destiny. One is suddenly faced with structure, discipline, and of course, order. But making sure that the two-week affair goes smoothly is not an easy task. While we take a look at some of the highlights from Recruit Camp 95, Lieutenant Colonel David Birch has more to say on the role of the regiment, while Major Edward Tucker, head of this year's Recruit Camp management team, and Captain Brian Gonzalves, his second in command, will explain the role of the management team and some of the things facing the new recruit, in addition to what makes a good leader. Following that, Sergeant Johnson, one of this year's platoon leaders, and an instructor from overseas will comment on the standard of the newest Bermuda Regiment recruits. We will also hear about Recruit Camp 95 from a recruit's point of view.
This is the one organization in this community that forces young Bermudians from Pakistan and back of town to work together and to learn a lot about each other. And I think in the environment in which they're in, particularly during recruit camp, forces them to do that, and at the end of the day, they go away from here with a lot more knowledge about how we can better work and live together.
Right.
I think it's an entirely non-political entity. Officers in the regiment cannot be members of any political party, and as a matter of policy, the regiment operates, as you know, under the authority of the governor, but we operate in support of the government of the day. So
it's not political.
It's not political at all. In our current role, it is quite appropriate for us to be the type of force that we are, part-time. And I think that works very much to our benefit in that we draw people from all segments of the community, and they come together to do a bit of soldiering, and we are able to maintain all of our responsibilities with the current structure of the regiment. There are discussions at the moment with all of the base closures about that role changing. Should that change, then I think the expansion of our role will include increased resources, both financially and personnel. I don't think at this stage of the game that we can have an increased responsibility without additional funding and staffing. That it is entirely correct that every young male Bermudian is entitled to serve, and with the current results of the reduction in the birth rate 18, 19 years ago, virtually every young male born in Bermuda 20 years ago is likely to serve. And on that basis, I think that people are on an equal footing. If they get selected, then they should have to serve. If they don't get selected, then it's a fair process. We are having problems in terms of the numbers that we're able to have in recruit camp. Like the numbers are dramatically down in this camp. And it's for that reason, as well as another reason, which I think is very positive for the community and somewhat detrimental to us in the short term, but beneficial to us in the long term, in that a larger number of young people are going away to university, so they have the service deferred. And so what we are finding is that we are getting better educated and more mature young people coming into the regiment at the end of their schooling. And so it means that there's a delay in their service, but it's not.
So they're still eventually coming back to
oh, yeah.
after 3 years.
It's what they have their service deferred as opposed to exempted.
The management team is basically the company headquarters. And the company headquarters, of course, myself being the officer commanding, I'm backed up by a team of Bermudians. Ostensibly, you've been speaking with my second in command, Captain Gonzalves. But I also have a company sergeant major who is responsible for documentation. I have a permanent staff instructor who is British, Sergeant Major Graham Keeble. Also, within the company headquarters, we have a company quartermaster stores. His name is Color Brangman, Color Sergeant Erskine Brangman. And we also have computerization. The regiment has a computer network, and we have 2 computer operators, Corporals Salters and Corporal Soars. That is the management team, if you would, that in effect assist me in the operation of this 2-week camp and this program of training. The team comes together for a period of approximately 2 years, and we have postings every year, and this team can change in its makeup. From the left, we have Captain Brian Gonzalez, who's my second in command. He handles matters as I delegate to him. He's been handling most recently press liaison. Next to him is Sergeant Major Warren Furbert, EM. Sergeant Major Furbert is my right-hand man in matters of discipline. He ensures that the standard of the company is there. He also handles all of the administration in the company. Next to him is Sergeant Major Graham Keeble, Royal Anglian Regiment. He's the permanent staff instructor, and he is responsible for ensuring that our training is up to British Army standard. Next to him is Color Sergeant Erskine Brangman. His job is stores. He's the company quartermaster stores, and he ensures that we have all the equipment, uniforms that we will need to operate during the camp. Of course, the regiment is now computerized, and we have a computer network. The training company taps into that network, and as a result, we have 2 computer operators, Corporal Salters and Corporal Soares, and next to them is Corporal Trott, who is an administration corporal and goes out and liaises between the company headquarters and the platoons.
As you know, our pick is more or less random, and we get the 18-year and 19-year-olds into the regiment. Of course, they have to be fit. They go through the doctor's checks first, and they have to be medically fit, and also they have to be free of any extremely serious crimes, and that is actually done prior to them coming up and doing the attestations and getting their kit.
As far as officers are concerned, what is considered as officer material?
First of all, you need to have a pleasant personality. Second of all, you need to be willing to go far above and beyond your regular call. And third, you must be of relatively sound fitness as well, because of course you can't leave from the rear. And you must have a bit of intelligence as well. There's going to be a couple of things where you need to decipher on your own. You need to be calm under pressure. And also you need to think for yourself as well. Right. Not only do you follow orders, but you also need to make some command decisions by yourself. As anyone knows nowadays, you get leadership material, whether or not you go to Sandhurst or West Point, anywhere. People that I've known in the United States, this one 2-star general, he was in charge of the 82nd Airborne for a period of time. He didn't go to West Point. He came up through the ROTC program. As you know, we only have about 22 full-timers. One colonel, we've got about 5 full-timers from the UK right now, and they're more or less here to assist us with the doctrine that we've become accustomed to and that we follow. And we also have a number of Bermudian full-timers on staff as well. So it could be a number of years. We've had people in the regiment for over 20 years. Mr. Eade, that I know of, who's the training warrant officer, he's been in well over 20 years. The quartermaster has been in well over 20 years and so forth. So they can be in for a very long time. This year they're going back to Camp Lejeune. It's a big marine complex in North Carolina. And there we're going to be able to utilize the ranges. They have many number of different ranges out there. We're also going to be able to utilize their training areas such as conventional warfare. And also they have what is called Mount City, which is a big town more or less created for internal security operations. And we're going to be able to utilize that.
Well, the group we had this year, this is actually my 4th recruit camp. I did it the first time as a private, 2 years as a lance corporal, and then this is my 1st year as a platoon sergeant. This year, they seem to be getting a little better. My 1st year, it seemed like the discipline, we need to discipline them a little bit more, but this group seems to be a little bit more reserved, a little more conservative, and a little easier to control. In recent years, we've sort of stepped up things a little bit in the regiment, and we've also got a little bit more reorganization, and things are just running a lot smoother. as they seem to have run in the past. Well, they do learn a lot. They are required to learn a lot in this 2 weeks, and it seems that most of them do pick up quite a few things quite quickly. They are very keen. They're usually very interested in the firing of their weapons and stuff like that on the range. The drill as well. It's all something very new to them. It's a big challenge for them, and they handle it pretty well. We do have quite a few, actually in my platoon, 9 platoon, that we do over the course of the 2 weeks, myself, the platoon commanders, and the corporals for the platoon, they actually try to pick out the people that we think will be NCO material, our junior NCOs, and we recommend them to go forth through the Carter for a 6-month training period to give them their first step up in rank.
Well, the first week was real hard, waking up early in the morning, but now getting going, getting used to it.
Feel very confident about it. I enjoy it very much. Just don't. It's all right, very disciplined camp. Yeah, I heard a lot of bad stories about camp, but you can get out here, it's not really as bad as everyone says it is.
I think the standard of recruit across the board is very, very high. I mean, I was very impressed with a lot of the recruits, particularly how fast they pick things up. They've only got 2 weeks to learn all the training, which in the British Army would take possibly 6 months to instill in our recruits. So the recruits are doing very well.
The regiment believes that the teaching of discipline begins when you are young. More on the regiment's younger set when we return. Another entity within the regiment are the cadets and the junior leaders. Color Sergeant Cleveland Simmons, who is responsible for training and other matters, says that this scheme provides skills useful for later recruitment into the regiment and has been proven to inspire excellence among his trainees.
The Bermuda Cadet program actually runs throughout the high school system. We have the Worksat cadets, St. George's cadets, as well as Sands secondary cadets, and now just starting with us, Whitney cadets. We also have another program that runs alongside with the Bermuda Cadet Corps program, which is the Junior Leader program, which runs on Friday evenings at war camp. You find that it creates pretty much of a competition basis between the females and the males, usually the females winning.
Okay, and what is the age range?
The age is between the ages of 13 right up to the age of 17. It usually causes a problem for the gentleman later on because of the 18-year-old draft age, so we usually stop it at the age of 17.
So they don't then receive credit, if you will, for having spent time in the cadets?
No, not as yet, but what we do find is that the teenagers or the young men that do spend time in the Bermuda Cadet Corps or the junior leaders actually are the more experienced soldiers once entering into the regiment. Of course, they've already learned the weapons and as well as the drill and some other Army skills that we teach during the cadet program. We do keep in close contact with the schools, but it doesn't reflect on their grades that rather they're introduced to the program or not. Usually we find that the kids that are in the program actually excel. For one reason or the other, their grades usually go up or stay at a moderate level, as well as the disciplinary as far as the individuals, because with us installing the discipline within them at the camp or within the program, they find that they are well behaved within school and therefore are able to learn lessons taught at school. We find that over the past, a bit of history, we found that most of the cadets or junior leaders excel to actually becoming head boys or head girls within the school system. The way the teenagers' disciplinary problems are coming within the community at the moment, the program couldn't hurt with the disciplinary things that we install within our program as far as a drill, having to stand still when told to stand still, having to do as they're told without questioning the question of being told what to do. I think it'll be very good to make it mandatory. Okay, in the Bermuda Regiment at the moment, what we have is we have the Commandant, which is Major Bento, Major John Bento, he is part-time, and myself, I'm the permanent staff instructor for the program. I actually do up the programs and so forth, and with that management team, we also have the part-time soldiers, Sergeant Brown, Sergeant Smith, who assists with the Junior Leader program. Each program that we run the school in has to actually provide us a teacher that assists with the program, and this is for instruction purposes. Also, if we may have to contact the school for one reason or the other that we cannot attend or we're going to be a bit late, then this teacher can fill in. And we actually teach the teachers on how to instruct with the military skills that are required within the program. So all in all, it operates with a full-time regiment as well as some part-time assistants.
Captain Dill, can you just give us a little bit of the history of the Bermuda Regiment Band? I know it's probably the most visible part of the Bermuda Regiment.
Yes, well, the Bermuda Regiment Band was formed when, in 1965, the two regiments of Bermuda, the Bermuda Militia Artillery and the Bermuda Rifles, amalgamated into the Bermuda Regiment proper. The individual regiments also had two bands, and the two bands then became the Bermuda Regiment Band. So we can effectively say in 1965 the Bermuda Regiment Band as well was formed along with the Bermuda Regiment. And from that time we've had three director of musics from Bermuda. The first being, in fact, four director of musics. The first being Captain Horace Gibbons, the second being Major Kenneth Dill, the third being Captain Leslie Lowe, and then promoted to Major Leslie Lowe, and myself, who is, of course, Captain Barrett Dill. Very major highlights, actually. I can recall in 1983, we actually did a Lord Mayor's parade in London. We paraded in front of thousands and thousands of Londoners, the Bermuda Regiment Band. That, in fact, was a very prideful moment for Bermuda. We've also had recently performed at the Stone Mountain Tattoo in Atlanta. We had, in 1991, a very successful Far East tour. The Regiment Band, in fact, touring places like Hong Kong, Singapore, Bangkok, and Malaysia. And this was through the joint efforts of corporate sponsorship and individual efforts from the Bermuda Regiment Band as far as fundraising is concerned, and promoting Bermuda into the corners of the Far East. Most certainly last year, I think, was one of the most exciting and exhilarating times of the Bermuda Regiment Band, in that we had requests for command performance in front of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth when she was here for her royal visit. And this performance was at Government House, which went off very, very well. We also had last year the change of command ceremony with our former Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Alan Rance, retiring, and our present Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel David Birch, coming in as Present Colonel. And immediately following that, the Regiment Band then departed for Toronto and performed in Niagara Falls, where we took part in the Trooping of the Colors ceremony for the Lincoln and Welland Regiment. And then, of course, the most spectacular event last year was the Bermuda Tattoo at National Stadium, which was a very momentous and, once again, successful event that the Bermuda Regiment actually hosted and put on jointly. And we're also hoping to put this on for 1995 as well in November.
Right. Now, is service in the Regiment Band an alternative to service in the Bermuda Regiment proper?
Yes, I guess in some aspects you can say that it is an alternative. What we generally have are recruits coming in for the 2-week boot camp, and I then give a brief to the new recruits asking if anyone would like to join up with the Bermuda Regiment Band. And generally speaking, we have members who are not necessarily musically proficient. I teach them and bring them up to a particular standard for the Bermuda Regiment Band, and then they would become a bona fide member of Bermuda Regiment Band. But it's not necessary for them to have any musical background as such, just a keen interest in music and in, of course, the Bermuda Regiment.
How many members are there in the band?
At the moment, we have 55 members. Of that 55, we have 11 who are presently overseas in colleges and universities, and we also have 15 junior members. Junior members meaning anyone who's under the age of 18. At the moment, we have the youngest, who is 11 years old. And they then perform along with the Regiment Band until they reach age 18, in which time we consider them to be a mature soldier, and they become bona fide members of the Bermuda Regiment.
Can you reveal some of the upcoming events, activities for the Regiment Band?
Oh, yes. Well, at the moment, the highlight on our calendar is a trip overseas. We will be embarking on a 2-week annual camp to North Carolina. But in conjunction with that, we hope to jumpstart the tourism industry. We will be performing in places like Charlotte. We will then bus up to Raleigh-Durham, and then bus to Atlanta, where we'll perform for travel-related industries and more or less give them the indication of what a Bermuda holiday is all about. And generally, this is under the auspices of the Department of Tourism in the Northeast region, whose manager is Mr. Garth Pedro Peters. And he, in fact, is organizing this for us once we're in the U.S.
Now, what is the typical practice session like?
Well, we rehearse once a week on a Monday evening, and generally it's 2 hours, from 7:30 until 9:30. Occasionally, as some of my members will tell you, we will extend that depending on how the musical outcome is, whether or not I'm pleased with the actual rehearsal or not. If I'm not, then we have been known to go up to 11 o'clock at night with the rehearsals in order to ensure that we have a very good, viable product for the general public of Bermuda.
Now, the band members themselves, is there a particular piece of music that seems to be everyone's favorite?
Oh, well, I can say categorically that the pop music is always the most popular. But having said that, we are a traditional regiment band, so I have to be very careful in how popular the pieces of music become. We play things, for instance, like there's something going on at the moment that is a soca tune. I'm in the process of arranging that all of the members are very keen to play, but in line of our tradition, and we are billed as a marching military band, then we do play the traditional British American marches as well.
Right. Now, some military groups, i.e. the Air Force and the Army, they have their own special march or tune, like you'll hear from the Hall of Montezuma for the Marines or something like that. Is there a special piece for the Bermuda Regiment?
Well, the most prideful piece for the Bermuda Regiment is a piece that was written specifically for us, and that was, of course, written for the amalgamation in 1965, written by Major Laurie Dunn, who was the first director of music here. And he, in fact, wrote it, and it is entitled The Bermuda Regiment March, simply the Bermuda Regiment March. And this is something that gets the spirits up whenever we're on route marches, for instance. Then this is what we would invariably play entering Warrior Camp, to really put the shoulders back, the neck in the back of the collar, and to march with the head up and with pride in our unit.
When we come back, one final tribute to the men and women of the Bermuda Regiment. In addition to the countless hours spent drilling and the obvious physical education activities and time out on the shooting range, Bermuda Regiment soldiers must spend time learning the art of camouflage and concealment. And you have to know the difference between too much, too little, and just enough. Captain Brian Gonzalez, one of the officers in charge of this year's recruit camp, says that this skill is useful for all sorts of situations.
Today's training is basically to familiarize the soldiers with the fundamentals of camouflage and concealment. Camouflage and concealment, there are many different techniques. Obviously, the basics is blending in with the surroundings around you. So with Bermuda, you have a lot of greenery, foliage, subtropical sort of terrain. And it's basically knowing how to pick up the terrain, blend it into your body, break up your body's outline and so forth, your shape, silhouette and so forth. And also concealment, how to move through different parts of cover. For instance, using shadows to move, as opposed to out in the sunlight. And also to paint your face up with camouflage paint, break out the shine and so forth. Well, as you're well aware, the regiment's, one of the main roles of the regiment is, in fact, internal security. And not only will they be doing key points, for instance, guarding Balco, Otalco, Government House, and so forth, and they'll be visible. However, they might have to do some non-visible sorts of duties, and they need to know how to blend in with the surroundings around them, not be seen. Well, there's many different areas in which a military service needs to be trained. And they need to be trained in those areas in case they are needed to perform the duties. And if the regiment is being trained in various areas, which they are this recruit camp, as basic training, these are fundamental areas, and is basically just to be ready in case we're needed to do anything, for that matter.
That's just a brief glimpse into the world of the Bermuda Regiment. They are our men and our women, and for all of their efforts on our behalf, it is my hope that you'll join with me in saluting that effort and their achievements. Therefore, in the last few minutes of our program, while the national anthem plays in their honor, let's take a final look at a visual montage of that entity that is the Bermuda Regiment. Thank you for sharing this time with us. I'm Tori Crichton. Good evening.